The heart of non-duality, and therefore of the spiritual search for awakening, search for enlightenment, is the idea that the ego, which is to say our sense of being a separate entity, a doing, experiencing person, is in some sense an illusion. And in order to penetrate this illusion, we engage in various spiritual exercises. But the actual reality of the ego is even more, let's say, mysterious than that. It's something like this. Suppose I started by saying 1 plus 1 equals 3. Well, 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 3. But suppose I started by saying that, and let's suppose you believed it. Then I could build on that. I could say, okay, well, if 1 plus 1 equals 3, then 2 equals 3. And if 2 equals 3, then 2 times 2 equals 6. And I could start drawing all these conclusions, right? I could go on and on like that. I could say, 2 plus 2 equals 6, or something like that, right? I could go on drawing these incorrect conclusions, and it all started with this sort of initial statement that was wrong, which is 1 plus 1 equals 3. The egoic idea, that is to say, the idea at the heart of our sense of ourselves as independent and separate, is something like that. It's something like that kind of misconception that's then built upon by all the other mental habits, and in particular language, thought generally, right? Our ideas of goals, ideas of our hopes and regrets and desires, and our entire framework and structure for reality is built essentially upon this incoherent core idea. And it is in order to preserve that idea from being examined carefully, right? That this entire machinery of mind keeps operating to distract people. If you're busy chasing various desires or regretting things or fearing things and whatnot, you don't have the mental space to actually be like, oh, well, does any of this actually make sense? To actually look at the core idea and really see it. Because as soon as you saw it, the entire structure would then evaporate, right? Because you'd be like, oh, 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 3. So the entire tower that's built on that foundation then suddenly just falls. So in some sense, right, this is the reason for the emphasis on attempting to obtain a relatively quiet mind, so that you can start to break down the machinery that prevents you from looking. When that machinery is sufficiently broken down and you do look and you do see, the foundation is then proven to be incoherent. Of course, there's one more real mind-bending twist in all this, which is that even the idea that there is this core idea that's incoherent, even that is part of the incoherent tower of ideas. There's a kind of recursivity, it's like two mirrors looking at each other, that kind of thing, how it generates an infinite number of mirrors. It's sort of like that. The reality is, even the idea that there is such a thing as an ego which is fooling you, even the idea that there is something called an illusion under which you are struggling, is also part of the illusion. And all of this is seen directly if there is a quiet mind which looks intensely, and which, by looking intensely, stops slowly all the mental habits that distract you, and eventually sees the foundation. But the foundation, the egoic foundation, is an incoherent idea like that. And everything that we think we know, all our means of knowledge, which is in language and it's in thought, is all built on this incoherent foundation. And that's why, for example, a lot of these metaphysical questions that seem unanswerable, like questions about free will, questions about time, questions about the creation of the universe, and much else, are actually incoherent as well, because they too are built on this incoherent foundation. It's not something that you can fully understand just by thinking about it, of course, right? This is just setting out a framework to encourage you to look within. This is not an actual description of what things are, because even my calling the ego an incoherent idea is itself in language. And language is itself part of the incoherent framework that is built on this incoherent idea. And so language can't accurately describe what's going on, because language is itself, in some profound sense, meaningless. So that's how all these sorts of metaphysical questions, complicated existential questions, are answered. Ultimately, it's not by giving specific answers. It's by looking deeply through self-inquiry or through surrender, that is, through looking at the sense of the I am and searching for it and chasing it, or by ignoring thought. One way or the other, you look deeply at the structure, the foundation of all of these thoughts. And seeing that, it disappears. In fact, it does more than disappear. It's seen never to have existed. And not even that.